Kennedy's new name was Claire Morrison. She lived in a studio apartment in Baltimore's Fells Point neighborhood, worked as a bookstore clerk, kept her hair short, and dyed auburn. The woman who'd curated exhibitions and debated Min-jun about art theory had been buried under layers of carefully constructed normalcy. Claire Morrison was quiet, forgettable, safe. Kennedy Hayes was wanted for questioning by the FBI. The distinction felt academic. Both women were ghosts. She'd been gone for 6 weeks when she finally broke down and searched his name online. The headlines were everywhere. Korean businessman arrested in organized crime probe gallery owner. Faces racketeering charges. Federal prosecutors build case against alleged crime boss. There was footage. Min-jun in handcuffs, being led from his home by federal agents. His face was blank. Controlled, giving away nothing. But Kennedy had learned to read him. She saw the exhaustion in the set of his shoulders, the defeat in the way he didn't resist. He looked smaller somehow. Human. The article mentioned a missing woman, Kennedy Hayes, person of interest, possibly coerced, possibly complicit. The FBI was asking for information about her whereabouts. Kennedy closed the laptop and threw up. Ji-seok called once a week on a burner phone. Updates delivered in crisp, emotionless sentences. Mr. Hwang's arraignment is scheduled for Friday. His lawyers are confident about bail. The gallery has been seized as part of the asset forfeiture. Dr. Park is cooperating with investigators. Your mother has been interviewed twice. She told them she hasn't heard from you in months. That last one made Kennedy's hands shake. Her mother, lying to federal agents, protecting a daughter who'd abandoned her without explanation. How is he? Kennedy asked during the fourth call. Ji-seok was silent for a moment. He's surviving. That's not what I asked. It's the only answer I have, Miss Hayes. Morrison. My name is Claire Morrison now. Of course. My apologies. The formality was worse than anger would have been. Ji-seok knew what she'd cost Min-jun, knew she'd run when he needed her most, and his professionalism was the kindest condemnation he could offer. Can I? Kennedy stopped, started again. Can I send him a message? Just to tell him, no. Any contact from you strengthens the prosecution's coercion narrative. It's the only thing keeping you from being charged as an accomplice. Ji-seok's voice softened fractionally. He doesn't want to hear from you. Miss Morrison, he wants you safe. That's all. The line went dead. Kennedy sat in her tiny apartment and realized she'd become exactly what Min-jun had tried to prevent. A ghost, alive but not living, existing in the margins of a life that used to be hers. And the worst part was knowing he'd chosen this for her. Had sacrificed himself so she could have this half-existence. Had let federal agents take him without fighting because fighting would have exposed her. She'd wanted him to be less controlling, less possessive, less willing to cage her. Now she understood. The cage had been protection, and without it, she was just alone. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for late November. Kennedy watched the news coverage from her apartment, volume low, curtains drawn. Min-jun's lawyers argued for bail. No flight risk, ties to the community, presumption of innocence. The prosecutor countered with evidence of international connections, multiple passports, a history of violence captured on camera. The judge denied bail. Kennedy watched Min-jun's face on the screen, watched him hear the verdict without flinching, watched federal marshals lead him away in handcuffs and orange jumpsuit. He looked directly at the camera once. Just once. And Kennedy could have sworn he was looking for her. She turned off the TV and sat in darkness. The nightmares started in week 8. Kennedy would dream she was back in the warehouse. But this time, when Sang-woo's men grabbed her, Min-jun didn't save her. He just watched from across the room, handcuffed, helpless. And she'd wake up screaming his name. Or she'd dream about the club, about climbing onto his lap. But when she tried to stand, she couldn't move. His hands on her waist weren't restraining. They were the only thing keeping her from falling into an abyss that had opened beneath her feet. Or she'd dream about the safe house in Virginia. About Mika's face when she realized what Kennedy had become. But in the dream, it wasn't Mika tied to that chair. It was Kennedy's mother, and Min-jun was the one holding the gun. She stopped sleeping more than 3 hours a night. The bookstore manager noticed. "Claire, honey, are you okay? You look exhausted." Kennedy forced a smile. "Just not sleeping well. I'll be fine." "Boyfriend troubles?" The question was innocent, casual, but Kennedy felt it like a knife. "Something like that," she managed. She lasted 2 more weeks before she started making mistakes, small ones at first, putting books in the wrong section, forgetting to clock out, losing track of conversations mid-sentence. But they accumulated. The manager pulled her aside. "Claire, I like you. You're a good worker, but you need to get it together. Whatever's going on in your personal life, deal with it. I can't have someone this distracted on the floor." Kennedy nodded, apologized, promised to do better. But that night she looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the woman staring back. Short auburn hair, cheap makeup, clothes from Target. A name that wasn't hers attached to a life that felt like performance art. She'd lost Min-jun, lost her career, lost her friends, her family, her identity. And for what? To work retail and pretend the past 4 months hadn't happened? Kennedy picked up the burner phone, stared at it for 20 minutes. Then she called Ji-seok. "I need to know how he is. Really." Ji-seok sighed. "Miss Morrison, please, I'm losing my mind here. I just need to know he's okay." Silence. Then, "He's in solitary. Protective custody because of his connections. 23 hours a day in a cell the size of a bathroom. No visitors except his lawyers. No contact with other inmates. No sunlight." Kennedy's chest constricted. "For how long?" "Until trial, which could be 6 months, maybe a year." "That'll destroy him." "He knows." Ji-seok's voice was flat. "But it's safer than general population. The Sang-woo organization has people inside. They've already tried twice to—" He stopped. "Tried to what?" "Nothing. It's been handled." "Ji-seok, he's alive, Miss Morrison. That's all you need to know. And all he needs you to know." "I want to visit him." "Absolutely not. You're not Claire Morrison to the federal system. You're Kennedy Hayes, missing person, potential witness. The moment you surface, you're arrested and compelled to testify." "Then I'll testify. I'll tell them I was there voluntarily, that Min-jun didn't coerce me." "And condemn him in the process?" "The coercion narrative is the only thing creating reasonable doubt about premeditation. If you admit you were a willing participant, you confirm he had motive to kill Sang-woo. You make him look calculating instead of protective." Ji-seok's voice went harsh. "You want to help him? Stay hidden, stay quiet. Let his lawyers do their job." "So I just—" "What? Exist in limbo while he rots in prison?" "Yes, that's exactly what you do." The line went dead. Kennedy threw the phone across the room. It shattered against the wall. Mika surfaced in week 10. Kennedy saw her on the news. An interview about women who'd been caught in criminal investigations through no fault of their own. Mika looked thin, haunted, but alive. She'd moved to Portland, changed her last name, was working for a nonprofit. The interviewer asked if she'd heard from Kennedy Hayes. No, Mika said quietly. And honestly, I hope I never do. That part of my life is over. I survived it. And now I'm trying to rebuild. Kennedy watched the interview 3 times. Mika had survived, had escaped Min-jun's world and built something new. So why couldn't Kennedy do the same? She tried. God, she tried. She went on dates with coworkers, forced herself to socialize, attempted to build a life as Claire Morrison. But every man who touched her felt wrong. Every conversation felt hollow. Every moment of normalcy felt like betrayal. Because part of her was still in that prison with Min-jun. Still in that study, watching him prepare to sacrifice everything. Still in that car with Ji-seok, running from the only person who'd ever seen her completely and chosen her anyway. She was free. She was utterly alone. And she didn't know which was worse. The call from her mother came in week 12. Kennedy almost didn't answer. But her mother had been trying for days, and eventually, guilt outweighed caution. Mama, Kennedy. Sharon's voice broke on the name. Baby, where are you? I can't tell you that. The FBI came to my house again. They showed me pictures of you, with that man. They said you might be in danger, that you might need help. Kennedy closed her eyes. I'm not in danger. I'm safe. Safe? You disappeared from your life, Kennedy. You're wanted for questioning in a murder investigation. How is any of that safe? It's complicated. Then uncomplicate it. Come home. Turn yourself in. Tell them the truth about what happened. They'll protect you. The truth is complicated too, Mama. Kennedy's voice cracked. What if I told you I was there when a man died? What if I told you I watched it happen and didn't stop it? What if I told you part of me was glad? Silence. Kennedy, what are you saying? I'm saying I'm not who you think I am anymore. I'm not your daughter who loved art and had her whole future planned out. That person died somewhere between the gallery and the warehouse and the safe house. Tears slid down Kennedy's face. I'm someone else now. Someone who makes choices you wouldn't understand. Someone who loves a man you'd hate. I could never hate you. Not me. Him, you'd hate him. For what he is, for what he's done, for what he's made me complicit in. Kennedy wiped her eyes. And maybe you should. Maybe I should hate him too. But I don't. And I don't know how to stop loving him even though he's the reason I'm here. Even though he's the reason I've lost everything. Sharon was quiet for a long moment. Do you want to come home, baby? Really want to? Kennedy thought about that. About Richmond and her mother's house and the life that used to be waiting for her there. I don't know if I can, she whispered. I don't know if there's still a home to come back to, or a version of me that fits there anymore. There's always a home, and there's always a version of you I'll love. Even this one. Especially this one. Kennedy sobbed. I miss you so much. Then come back, even just to visit, even just to let me see your face. I can't. Not yet. Not until... Kennedy stopped. Until what? Until Min-jun was free? Until the charges were dropped? Until she figured out how to be Kennedy Hayes again? All of those felt impossible. I have to go, Mama. Kennedy, wait. I love you. Tell Aunt Joyce and the cousins I'm okay. And if the FBI comes back, tell them you don't know where I am. Tell them whatever you need to tell them. Baby. Kennedy hung up. She turned off the phone, pulled out the SIM card, broke it in half. Then she sat in her tiny bathroom and cried until she couldn't breathe. The revelation came in week 14. Kennedy was restocking shelves when she saw him. Not Min-jun, his father. Hwang Jin-woo stood in the bookstore's entrance, scanning the space with the efficiency of a man who'd spent a lifetime assessing threats. His eyes landed on Kennedy. He smiled. Kennedy's blood turned to ice. She dropped the book she was holding and ran. Out the back door, into the alley, heart hammering. He was waiting. Not Jin-woo, one of his men. Massive, expressionless, blocking her escape route. Kennedy spun. The other direction. Another man, younger but just as cold. She was trapped. Jin-woo emerged from the bookstore, hands in his pockets, completely calm. Miss Hayes, or should I call you Miss Morrison? You've been difficult to find. Kennedy backed against the wall. How did you... My son may be in prison, but I still have resources. It took time, but eventually... He gestured to the alley. Here we are. What do you want? To talk. Just talk. Jin-woo nodded to his men. They stepped back, giving space but not escape. You're wondering why I'm here, whether I've come to kill you, to punish you for destroying my son. Kennedy's hands shook. The answer is no. I'm not here to hurt you. Jin-woo moved closer. I'm here to offer you a choice. What kind of choice? Min-jun's trial is scheduled for March. The prosecution has a strong case. The footage, the witnesses, the pattern of criminal activity. His lawyers are good, but they're fighting uphill. Jin-woo's eyes were cold. Unless something changes, unless the narrative shifts. I don't understand. Testify against him. Tell the prosecutors he coerced you, that you were afraid for your life, that everything you did was under duress. Give them the victim story they're already constructing. Kennedy stared at him. You want me to betray Min-jun? To lie about what happened? I want you to save his life. Jin-woo's voice was steel. The prosecution is pushing for life in prison. No parole. They're making him an example. But if you testify that you were coerced, that he was protecting you from Sang-woo, it creates a defense. Makes it look like justified response to a threat instead of cold-blooded execution. He'd never forgive me. He's already told his lawyers to use that defense whether you cooperate or not. He's already sacrificing his pride to keep you out of prison. All I'm asking is that you make that sacrifice matter. Kennedy felt the world tilt. I don't believe you. Min-jun wouldn't... My son is many things, Miss Hayes, but he's not a fool. He knows the evidence is overwhelming. He knows he's facing life in prison. His only hope is proving he had no choice. That Sang-woo was an imminent threat. That killing him was the only way to protect you. Jin-woo pulled out a phone, played a recording. Min-jun's voice, slightly distorted but unmistakable. Use the coercion angle. Kennedy was afraid for her life. I was protecting her from a direct threat. Make the jury see it as defense, not murder. His lawyer's response. That only works if she testifies, if she confirms the threat. Then find her. Make her understand she has to do this. The recording stopped. Kennedy couldn't breathe. He's already made his choice. Jin-woo said quietly. Now you have to make yours. Testify and give him a chance at freedom, or stay hidden and watch him die in prison. That's not a choice. That's blackmail. That's love. Jin-woo's smile was cold. The kind that costs everything and gives nothing back. The kind my son learned from watching me destroy his mother with it. The kind that turns people into weapons against each other. He handed her a business card. You have 48 hours to decide. After that, the prosecution's witness list closes, and my son's fate is sealed. Jinwoo turned to leave, paused. For what it's worth, Miss Hayes, I believe you love him. I can see it in your eyes. The way you're torn apart by this. The way you've already decided, even though you're pretending you haven't. He looked back. But love isn't enough. It never is. You'll learn that soon enough. He left. Kennedy stood in the alley, business card in hand, and felt the last pieces of herself shatter. She didn't sleep for 48 hours. Instead, she researched, read transcripts of pretrial hearings, studied the prosecution's case, understood exactly what testifying would mean. She'd have to describe the warehouse, Sang-woo's threats, her fear, Min-jun's response. She'd have to say he was protecting her, that he had no choice. She'd have to lie. Because the truth was more complicated. Min-jun hadn't killed Sang-woo just to protect her. He'd killed him because he was angry. Because Sang-woo had dared to threaten something Min-jun considered his. Because violence was the language Min-jun spoke fluently, and love had only sharpened his vocabulary. But if she told that truth, he'd die in prison. And if she told the lie Jinwoo wanted, she'd destroy the one honest thing they'd ever had. Kennedy sat in her apartment and realized there was no right answer, only degrees of wrong. At hour 47, she made her decision. She called the number on Jinwoo's card. I'll do it, she said when he answered. I'll testify, but I have conditions. Name them. After the trial, regardless of the verdict, Min-jun never contacts me again. No calls, no letters, no attempts to find me. We're done. Completely. Silence. Then, that's not my decision to make. Make it his decision. Tell him those are my terms. I save him, but he lets me go. Forever. And if he refuses, then I stay hidden, and you find another way to save him. Jinwoo was quiet for a long moment. You're more ruthless than I gave you credit for. I learned from the best. Kennedy's voice was hollow. Do we have a deal? I'll speak to my son. But Miss Hayes... Jinwoo paused. Are you certain this is what you want? Once you testify, there's no going back. You'll be tied to this case forever. Your name, your face, your story, all of it will be public record. I know. And you're willing to pay that price? Kennedy thought about Min-jun in solitary confinement, about 23 hours a day in a cell the size of a bathroom, about assassination attempts and federal prosecutors and the slow erosion of everything he was. Yes, she whispered. I'm willing. Then I'll be in touch. The line went dead. Kennedy sat in the darkness and waited for the call that would destroy the last pieces of who she used to be. The call came 18 hours later. Jinwoo's voice was neutral. My son has agreed to your terms, on one condition of his own. Kennedy's heart hammered. What condition? That you testify truthfully, not the story I want, not the narrative his lawyers want. The truth exactly as you remember it, whatever the consequences. Kennedy's breath caught. But that could destroy his defense. He doesn't care. He said... Jinwoo paused, and for the first time she heard something almost human in his voice. He said he won't let you perjure yourself for him, won't let you destroy your integrity to save him. That if he's going to prison, it'll be on the truth, not lies. Tears slid down Kennedy's face. He also said to tell you... Jinwoo stopped, started again. He said you were the only honest thing in his life, and he won't corrupt that, not even to save himself. Kennedy couldn't speak. The prosecution will contact you within 24 hours. Jinwoo continued. They'll want to depose you, prepare you for testimony. Do you understand what you're agreeing to? Yes. And you're still willing? Kennedy thought about Min-jun, about the way he'd held her in the shower, broken and shaking, about the way he'd kissed her like she was the only real thing in a world made of shadows, about the way he'd let federal agents take him without fighting because fighting would have exposed her. Yes, she whispered. I'm still willing. Then God help you both. Jinwoo hung up. Kennedy sat in her apartment and waited for the federal agents who would take her statement, who would ask her to describe the worst night of her life in clinical detail, who would make her relive every moment she'd spent trying to forget. And she understood with terrible clarity. Running hadn't saved either of them. It had only delayed the inevitable. Min-jun was still in prison, still facing trial, still being slowly destroyed by a system designed to break people like him. And Kennedy was still complicit, still tied to him, still unable to imagine a future that didn't include his shadow. Separation hadn't made them free. It had just made them suffer alone. The FBI agents arrived at dawn. 2 of them, a man and a woman, both professional, both carrying the weight of too many cases and not enough evidence. Claire Morrison? The woman asked. That's not my real name. We know. Kennedy Hayes, you're not under arrest, but we need you to come with us. There are people who need to talk to you. Kennedy stood. She'd been packed for hours. 1 bag, everything she owned in the world. Am I going to prison? The agents exchanged a look. That depends on what you tell us. Kennedy nodded. Then let's get this over with. They led her to a black sedan. No handcuffs, but the message was clear. She was in custody now, whether officially or not. As the car pulled away from Fells Point, Kennedy looked back once at the apartment that had been her hiding place. At the life she'd tried to build as Claire Morrison. It was already fading, already becoming another ghost in a life full of them. And somewhere in a federal prison, Min-jun was waking up to his 23rd hour of solitary confinement. Neither of them free, neither of them saved. Just 2 people who'd loved each other enough to destroy themselves, and still couldn't figure out how to let go. United States of America versus Hwang Min-jun. The trial began on a Tuesday in March in a federal courthouse designed to make people feel small. Kennedy sat in the witness waiting room on the 3rd floor, hands clasped in her lap, wearing a navy suit the prosecutors had approved. Conservative, respectable, the kind of outfit that said victim without saying it out loud. She'd been prepped for 6 days, mock examinations, practice cross, endless rehearsals of her story. The prosecutors, a white woman named Delgado and a black man named Foster, had been clear about their strategy. We're not asking you to lie, Delgado had said. Just to be precise about what you witnessed, what you felt, what you feared. Translation. Describe Min-jun as dangerous, Sang-woo as threatening, yourself as caught between them. Make it clean. Make it simple. Make it fit the narrative. But nothing about that night had been clean or simple. And Kennedy was about to testify to that in front of cameras and reporters and a jury of 12 people who'd already decided what kind of woman falls for a man like Min-jun. Through the window, she could see the crowd outside the courthouse. Protesters with signs, media vans with satellite dishes, the whole spectacle of American justice performed for ratings. Someone had leaked her name a week ago. Now it was everywhere. The curator and the crime boss, A love story gone wrong black woman caught in Korean Mafia killing Stockholm Syndrome or something darker? Kennedy had stopped reading after the first dozen articles. They all said the same thing in different words. She was either a victim or a fool. Maybe both. None of them considered that she might be something else entirely. The bailiff appeared in the doorway. "Miss Hayes, they're ready for you." Kennedy stood on legs that didn't feel like hers. It was time. The courtroom was smaller than she'd expected. High ceilings and wood paneling designed to evoke gravitas. The jury box to the left, 12 faces, mostly white, mostly middle-aged, already watching her with the particular intensity of people who'd been told they'd see something shocking today. The prosecution table. Delgado and Foster, organized and confident. The defense table. Two lawyers in expensive suits, tablets and documents spread before them. And Min-jun. Kennedy's breath caught. She hadn't seen him in 4 months. Hadn't been allowed contact. Hadn't been able to prepare herself for this moment. He'd lost weight. His face was thinner, cheekbones more pronounced, shadows under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and solitary confinement. His hair was shorter, pushed back from his face. He wore a charcoal suit, probably provided by his lawyers to make him look less threatening, and his hands were folded on the table in front of him. He didn't look at her as she entered, kept his eyes forward, expression neutral, like she was just another witness in a case that didn't matter. But Kennedy saw the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw tightened fractionally, the slight movement of his fingers, there and gone so quickly she might have imagined it. He knew she was there. He just wasn't going to acknowledge it. The bailiff led Kennedy to the witness stand. Her heels clicked against marble, too loud in the hushed courtroom. She placed her hand on the Bible, repeated the oath in a voice that sounded like it belonged to someone else. "I do." She sat. And finally, Min-jun looked at her. Their eyes met across 20 feet of courtroom space. Kennedy saw everything in that look. Exhaustion and longing and fear and something that looked like apology. But underneath it all, she saw the thing that terrified her most. Resignation. He'd already accepted whatever was coming. Already made peace with the possibility that this testimony would destroy him. And he was telling her it was okay. That she should do what she needed to do. That he wouldn't blame her. Kennedy looked away before she started crying. Prosecutor Delgado approached the stand with the practiced ease of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. "Miss Hayes, thank you for being here today. I know this is difficult." Kennedy nodded. "Let's start with the basics. How did you meet the defendant?" Kennedy's throat was dry. "At a nightclub, Club Azure in Georgetown." "And what were the circumstances of that meeting?" "I was there for a friend's birthday. There was a dare involved. I approached him." "You approached Mr. Huang. Uninvited?" "Yes." "And how did he respond?" Kennedy hesitated. This was the first trap. The prosecution wanted her to say he was aggressive, threatening, that she'd been afraid from the start. But that wasn't true. He was cold, controlled. He told me I'd made a mistake. "A mistake approaching him?" "Yes." "Did he threaten you?" Kennedy thought about that moment, about his hand on her waist, his voice in her ear. "You don't know what you just did." Not explicitly, but I understood I'd crossed a line. "Did you feel afraid?" "Yes." "But you saw him again. Why?" "Because he offered me a job. At his gallery. I needed the position. I accepted." Delgado nodded, making notes. And during this employment relationship, did the nature of your interaction with Mr. Huang change? Yes. How? Kennedy's hands clenched in her lap. We worked together on exhibition proposals. We spent time together professionally, and it became personal. When you say personal, what do you mean? We were in a relationship. A romantic relationship? Yes. And during this relationship, did you become aware of Mr. Huang's criminal activities? Kennedy paused. This was the second trap. Admit she knew and become complicit. Deny it and commit perjury. I became aware that his business interests were more complex than I initially understood. Complex how? Objection. Min-jun's lead attorney, a silver-haired man named Chen, stood. Calls for speculation about matters outside the witness's expertise. Sustained. The judge looked at Delgado. Rephrase. Miss Hayes, did Mr. Huang tell you about his involvement in organized crime? He told me he came from a family with complicated business practices. He told me his world was dangerous. He told me loving him would have consequences. And you stayed anyway? Yes. Why? Kennedy finally looked at Min-jun. He was watching her now, eyes dark and unreadable. Because I loved him. The courtroom was silent. Despite knowing he was dangerous? Despite knowing about his criminal activities? I didn't fully understand the scope of what he was involved in. But yes, despite knowing he was dangerous. Did you feel you had a choice? To leave the relationship? This was the crux of the coercion defense. Say no, and she gives Min-jun an out. Say yes, and she makes herself complicit. Kennedy chose truth. Yes, I had a choice. He never physically prevented me from leaving. Never threatened me if I tried. The cage was psychological, not physical. She heard Min-jun's sharp intake of breath. Delgado frowned. Psychological how? He made me feel like I was the only thing that mattered to him. Like leaving would destroy him. Like I was responsible for his humanity. Kennedy's voice was steady now. That's its own kind of trap. Not because he forced it, but because I believed it. So you felt obligated to stay? No. I felt compelled to stay. There's a difference. Can you explain that difference? Obligation implies duty. Compulsion implies desire. I stayed because I wanted to. Because being with him felt like being seen for the first time in my life. Even when it was terrifying. Even when I knew it was destroying other parts of me. Delgado looked thrown. This wasn't the script. Miss Hayes, let's move to the night of October 15th. Can you describe what happened? Kennedy took a breath. My friend Mika was kidnapped by a man named Lee Sang-woo. He used her as leverage to force Min-jun into a meeting. And you attended this meeting? Yes. Despite the danger? Because of the danger. Mika was my friend. She was in danger because of me. I needed to be there. Did Mr. Huang want you there? No, he tried to make me stay behind. But you went anyway? Yes. And what happened at this meeting? Kennedy closed her eyes, remembered the warehouse, the smell of concrete and fear, Sang-woo's smile. Sang-woo had set a trap. He had Mika tied to a chair. He had multiple armed men. He threatened to kill her unless Min-jun signed over territory and publicly acknowledged weakness. And how did Mr. Huang respond? He tried to negotiate, to find a way to get Mika out safely. But that's not what happened, is it? No. What happened? Kennedy opened her eyes, looked directly at the jury. I grabbed a gun from one of Sang-woo's men. I shot at the person holding Min-jun. I missed, but it created chaos. Min-jun got free. And when Sang-woo moved toward me, Min-jun shot him. Shot him how many times? Once. Center mass. And did Mr. Huang check if Mr. Lee was alive after shooting him? No. Did he call for medical assistance? No. Did he express remorse? Kennedy's throat tightened. No. He asked if I was hurt. That's all he cared about. So to be clear, Mr. Huang shot and killed Lee Sang-woo, did not attempt to render aid, did not call emergency services, and his only concern was your welfare? Yes. Does that sound like self-defense to you, Miss Hayes? Kennedy met Delgado's eyes. It sounds like a man who is willing to commit murder to protect someone he loved. Whether that's self-defense or something else, I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. But you were there, you witnessed it. In your opinion, was Mr. Huang in imminent danger when he pulled that trigger? Objection, Chen said sharply. Calls for expert opinion the witness is not qualified to provide. I'll allow it, the judge said. The witness may answer based on her observations. Kennedy looked at Min-jun again. He was watching her with those dark eyes, giving her nothing. Not permission, not guidance, just presence. In my opinion, Kennedy said slowly, Min-jun was always in danger. From Sang-woo, from rival organizations, from the world he lived in. Whether that specific moment constituted imminent danger, I can't say. But I know he believed Sang-woo would never stop coming for us. And I know he chose to end that threat permanently. By committing murder. By killing a man who'd kidnapped my friend and threatened to torture her. Yes. Delgado paused. Miss Hayes, do you believe Mr. Huang is a good man? Objection. Relevance. Goes to witness credibility and bias, Your Honor. I'll allow it. Answer the question, Miss Hayes. Kennedy took a breath. I don't think Min-jun is good or bad. I think he's someone who was raised in violence, who learned to survive by becoming more violent than the people around him. I think he's capable of terrible things. And I think... Her voice cracked. I think he tried to be better. For me. And I don't know if that makes him good or just less terrible than he could have been. The courtroom was silent. No further questions. Delgado said quietly. Chen approached for cross-examination with the careful deliberation of a surgeon. Miss Hayes, you testified that you love the defendant. Is that still true? Kennedy's hands shook. Yes. And you testified that you had a choice to leave the relationship. Do you stand by that statement? Yes. So to be clear, you were never physically restrained, never threatened with violence, never prevented from leaving? That's correct. In fact, Mr. Huang arranged for your safety multiple times, didn't he? After the initial threat from Mr. Lee? Yes. He moved you to a secure location, provided protection, ensured you had everything you needed. Yes. And when federal agents came for him, what did he do? Kennedy's throat closed. He told me to run. He prioritized your safety over his own freedom? Yes. Miss Hayes, you described the defendant as dangerous. Can you be more specific about what you mean? He's capable of violence. He's killed people. He runs organizations that operate outside the law. But was he ever violent toward you? No. Did he ever threaten you with violence? No. Did he ever use physical force against you? Only... Kennedy stopped. Only to keep me close when I tried to leave, to pull me back, but never to hurt me. So his violence was directed outward, toward people who threatened you? Objection. Leading. Sustained. Chen continued without missing a beat. Miss Hayes, on the night Mr. Lee was killed, you testified that you grabbed a gun and fired at one of Mr. Lee's men. Is that correct? Yes. Had you ever fired a gun before? No. Were you trained in firearm use? No. So, in a moment of extreme stress with no training, you made the decision to use lethal force. Why? Kennedy's voice was barely a whisper. Because they were going to kill him. And I couldn't watch that happen. So you understood in that moment that violence was the only option? Yes. And when Mr. Huang shot Mr. Lee, was he protecting you? Yes. Was he protecting your friend? Yes. Was he eliminating a threat that had already demonstrated willingness to kidnap, torture, and kill? Yes. So in your observation, Mr. Huang's actions were protective, not predatory? Kennedy looked at Min-jun. He was watching her with such intensity she could barely breathe. Yes, she whispered. He was protecting us. Always protecting us. Even when it cost him everything. No further questions. The trial continued for 3 more weeks. Expert witnesses testified about organized crime structures, about the Beko organization's activities, about the violence inherent in Min-jun's world. Character witnesses, including Dr. Park, who cried on the stand, described Kennedy as brilliant, dedicated, someone who would never willingly participate in criminal activity. The defense called witnesses who described Sang-woo's reputation, his history of violence, his explicit threats against Min-jun's organization. But the footage was damning. Min-jun shooting Sang-woo, calm and controlled, while Kennedy stood frozen in the background. It looked exactly like what the prosecution claimed. Premeditated murder. Kennedy watched from the gallery every day. Watched Min-jun sit motionless at the defense table, hands folded, expression neutral. Never looking at her except during breaks, when their eyes would meet for 3 seconds, and everything they couldn't say would pass between them. The media coverage was relentless. Korean gangster's black girlfriend, manipulation or love, racial dynamics in high-profile murder trial, why smart women fall for dangerous men. Kennedy stopped reading after a columnist suggested she had daddy issues and a fetish for Asian men with power. She stopped leaving her hotel room except for court appearances after someone recognized her at a coffee shop and posted her location online. She stopped sleeping after the 3rd death threat arrived via her lawyer. And through it all, Min-jun sat in that courtroom, silent and dignified, refusing to defend himself in ways that would require throwing her under the bus. His lawyers could have argued she'd seduced him, manipulated him, led him into situations he'd normally avoid. They didn't. They could have argued she was lying about the voluntary nature of their relationship, that she was complicit in criminal activity. They didn't. They built a defense around protection and reasonable fear and the specific threat Sang-woo posed. And they let Kennedy's testimony stand even when it complicated that defense. Even when it made Min-jun look more like a man in love than a man in danger. Closing arguments came on a Friday. Delgado was methodical. The evidence is clear. Hwang Min-jun executed Lee Sang-woo in cold blood. Not in self-defense. The victim was unarmed when shot. Not in defense of others. Miss Hayes and Miss Park were no longer in immediate danger. He killed because he was angry. Because his power had been challenged. Because that's what men like him do when they feel threatened. She paused. The defense wants you to believe this was love, that Mr. Huang was protecting the woman he cared about. But protecting someone doesn't require execution. It requires calling the police. It requires trusting the system. It requires being a civilized member of society. Mr. Huang chose violence because violence is his language. And Miss Hayes, Intelligent, accomplished Miss Hayes was his excuse, not his reason. Chen's closing was different, quieter, more personal. My client is not a good man. We're not arguing that. But the question before you isn't whether Hwang Min-jun is good. It's whether he's guilty of premeditated murder. And the evidence simply doesn't support that charge. He walked to the jury box. Lee Sang-woo kidnapped an innocent woman, held her for days, threatened to torture and kill her, set a trap designed to result in violence. And when that violence came, when Miss Hayes, out of desperation, grabbed a gun and started shooting, my client responded to protect her, to protect everyone in that warehouse. Was it legal? No. Was it justified? That's for you to decide. But was it premeditated? Was it planned, calculated, done with malice aforethought? Or was it a split-second decision made by a man who just watched the woman he loves nearly die? Chen returned to the defense table, placed his hand on Min-jun's shoulder. Hwang Min-jun is many things. A criminal, yes. A violent man, yes. But on the night of October 15th, he was also a man trying to save someone he loved from a very real threat. And if that's murder, if protecting the people you love from imminent harm is murder, then I fear for all of us. The jury deliberated for 4 days. Kennedy wasn't allowed in the courtroom for the verdict. Witnesses who testified couldn't be present. So she waited in a conference room down the hall, watching the clock and trying not to vomit. Ji-seok sat with her. He'd been her shadow for 3 weeks, ensuring her safety, bringing her food she couldn't eat and water she couldn't drink. Whatever happens, he said quietly, you did the right thing. Testifying, telling the truth. Did I? Kennedy's laugh was broken. I might have just sent him to prison for life. Or you might have saved him. The jury saw you, Miss Hayes. Saw you love him despite everything. That matters. Does it? Or did I just prove the prosecution's point? That I'm a smart woman who made stupid choices for a dangerous man? Ji-seok was quiet for a moment. My wife died 7 years ago. Cancer. And in the last months, she was in so much pain that loving her meant watching her suffer. Meant making choices that hurt us both. Meant staying when leaving would have been easier. He looked at Kennedy. You didn't make stupid choices. You made hard ones. There's a difference. Before Kennedy could respond, her lawyer appeared in the doorway. They're back. Verdict's in. Kennedy stood in the hallway outside the courtroom, listening through closed doors. She heard the judge ask if the jury had reached a verdict. Heard the foreperson, a middle-aged white woman who'd taken copious notes, respond yes. Heard the rustle of paper. Heard the judge ask Min-jun to stand. Kennedy's hands were shaking so badly, Ji-seok had to steady her. On the charge of first-degree murder, how do you find? Silence. Then, we find the defendant not guilty. Kennedy's knees buckled. On the charge of second-degree murder, how do you find? We find the defendant guilty. The world tilted. Guilty, but not of premeditated murder. Of murder in the heat of passion. Of killing without malice, aforethought, but with intent. It was a compromise verdict. The jury believed he'd killed Sang-woo, but they also believed he'd done it to protect Kennedy and Mika, that it wasn't planned, that it was a response to an immediate threat. Kennedy sank into a chair as the judge continued reading. Sentencing would be scheduled. Min-jun faced anywhere from 10 years to life. But he'd avoided the mandatory life sentence that came with first-degree murder. The defense had won something. But Min-jun was still going to prison, and Kennedy had put him there with her truth. They let her see him once before he was transported back to federal custody. A conference room, 2 guards outside, 10 minutes. Min-jun entered in handcuffs, dressed in prison orange. He looked exhausted, relieved, broken. They stared at each other across the table. "You testified truthfully," he said finally. "Thank you for that. I might have just given you 10 years. You gave me a chance. That's more than I deserved." He sat down slowly. "The lawyers think I'll get 12 to 15 years with a second-degree conviction, out in 8 with good behavior. 8 years. It's better than life. Better than death row." Min-jun's smile was sad. "I'll be 43 when I get out. You'll be 34, still young, still brilliant, still capable of building a life that doesn't include waiting for a convicted murderer. Don't... Kennedy, listen to me. Our deal stands. After this, after sentencing, you disappear. You rebuild. You become someone who doesn't have this trial attached to your name forever. I don't want... What you want doesn't matter." His voice was harsh. "What matters is survival. And you can't survive being tied to me. Not anymore. The trial made sure of that." Kennedy's eyes filled with tears. "So that's it? You go to prison and I just move on? Pretend this never happened? Yes? I can't. You will. Because you're strong. Because you're a survivor. Because loving me has already cost you too much. Min-jun, I need you to promise me something." Kennedy couldn't speak. "Promise me you'll live. Really live. Not hide, not run, not become a ghost. Build something beautiful. Fall in love with someone who can give you a normal life. Have the career you deserve. Be happy." "How can I be happy knowing you're in prison because of me? Because you'll understand that I made my choices. That I killed Sang-woo knowing the consequences. That I'd do it again." Min-jun leaned forward. "You didn't put me in prison, Kennedy. I put myself there the moment I decided you were worth more than my freedom." The guards knocked. "Time." Min-jun stood. "Goodbye, Kennedy." "Don't say goodbye. Say something else. Say anything else." He looked at her with those dark eyes. And Kennedy saw everything. Love and regret and resignation and something that looked like peace. "You were the most honest thing in my life. Thank you for that." Then he turned and walked out. The door closed, and Kennedy sat in that conference room and understood. This was the end. Not the ending she'd wanted. Not the reunion she'd imagined during those long weeks apart. Just an ending. Final and irreversible. Min-jun would go to prison. She would rebuild her life. And whatever they'd had, whatever complicated, destructive, beautiful thing they'd built, would become a story. A cautionary tale. A thing that happened once and could never happen again. Kennedy pressed her hands to her face and let herself break one final time. But the story wasn't over. 3 hours later, as Kennedy was leaving the courthouse through a back entrance, a woman approached her. Asian, mid-30s, beautiful in a severe way, expensive suit. Kennedy stopped. "Can I help you?" The woman smiled. "My name is Choi Ji-woo. I believe you've heard of me." Kennedy's blood went cold. The woman Min-jun had loved. The FBI agent who'd betrayed him. The ghost that had made him hate women for 15 years. "What do you want?" "To give you information." Ji-woo pulled out a folder. 3 weeks ago, I was contacted by Lee Sang-woo's son. He wanted to know about Hwang Min-jun's weaknesses, how to hurt him, how to destroy him completely. Kennedy's stomach dropped. "What did you tell him?" "Nothing. I'm out of that life. I've been out for 3 years." Jiwoo's eyes were hard. But he found what he needed anyway. He found you. And Miss Hayes, she handed Kennedy the folder. He's not done. The trial didn't end this. It only delayed it. Kennedy opened the folder with shaking hands. Inside were surveillance photos of her leaving her hotel, of Ji-seok, of Min-jun's lawyers, and at the bottom, a note in Korean with English translation attached. The white tiger killed my father. But tigers can be caged. Their mates, however, remain free. For now. Kennedy looked up at Jiwoo. What does this mean? It means Sang-woo's son is planning something. Something that targets you specifically. Something that will force Min-jun to make choices, even from prison. Jiwoo's voice was quiet. I came to warn you because I know what it's like to be used as a weapon against him. And I know what he'll do to protect you. Even now. Even locked away. Why do you care? Because 15 years ago, I destroyed the best man I ever knew. I turned him into something cold and cruel because I thought my job mattered more than his humanity, and I've regretted it every day since. Jiwoo's eyes were bright. You have a chance I didn't have. To walk away before this destroys you both completely. Take it. She turned to leave. Wait, Kennedy called. If you regret it, if you wish you'd made different choices, why are you telling me to run? Shouldn't you be telling me to fight for him? Jiwoo looked back, and for the first time, Kennedy saw something human in her expression. Because fighting for Hwang Min-jun doesn't mean staying with him. It means setting him free. And you can't do that if you're tied to him forever, looking over your shoulder, waiting for the next threat. She paused. Love him by letting him go. That's the only way either of you survives. She left. Kennedy stood in the alley, folder in hand, and felt the last pieces of her certainty crumble. The trial was over. The verdict was in. Min-jun was going to prison. But the war wasn't finished, and Kennedy was still a target, which meant the choice Min-jun had made, protecting her by letting her go, wasn't going to save her. It was only going to force her to make the same choice. Again and again, until one of them finally had the strength to stop. 4 years later, Kennedy Hayes became Dr. Kennedy Laurent on a Tuesday in September. The PhD in art history had taken 3 years at Columbia, completed under a name that was legally hers but felt like costume jewelry, real enough to pass inspection, fake enough to never quite fit. The dissertation on contemporary African diaspora art and institutional memory had been published by a university press. 3 galleries had expressed interest in her work. She was 30 years old. She had a studio apartment in Harlem with decent light and a fire escape where she grew herbs. She dated occasionally. A photographer named Marcus who didn't ask too many questions. A lawyer named Jennifer who asked too many. Neither relationship lasted past 3 months. She'd rebuilt herself from scratch. And most days she even believed in the reconstruction. Dr. Kennedy Laurent taught 2 classes at Hunter College, curated a small exhibition at a Bronx gallery, published essays in academic journals under her new name. She had colleagues who respected her, students who admired her. A life that looked from the outside like success. She also had a burner phone that never rang, a go bag packed under her bed, and nightmares that woke her at 3 a.m. with Min-jun's name on her lips. Some things you couldn't reconstruct. On the morning of September 17th, Kennedy was preparing for her post-colonial art seminar when her department chair knocked on her office door. Dr. Laurent, there's someone here to see you. Says it's urgent. Kennedy's stomach tightened. Who? He didn't give a name, but he's waiting in the lobby. Should I call security? Kennedy forced herself to breathe. No, I'll handle it. She took the stairs down slowly, hand in her bag where she kept pepper spray she'd never had to use. The man in the lobby was Korean, late 40s, expensive suit, scar bisecting his left eyebrow. Ji-seok. Kennedy hadn't seen him since the trial. 4 years of silence, 4 years of the careful distance Min-jun had insisted on. And now he was here. Miss Hayes, Dr. Laurent. Ji-seok corrected himself. I apologize for the intrusion, but we need to talk. Privately. Kennedy glanced around the lobby. Students everywhere, faculty passing through, security cameras in every corner. There's a coffee shop 2 blocks east. Meet me there in 10 minutes. She didn't wait for his response. The coffee shop was loud and crowded, exactly what Kennedy wanted. Harder to threaten someone with witnesses and espresso machines between you. Ji-seok ordered tea. Kennedy ordered nothing. How did you find me? She asked when he sat down. I've always known where you were. Mr. Hwang insisted on maintain surveillance for your protection. He's in prison. He doesn't get to insist on anything. On the contrary, Mr. Hwang's influence has only increased during his incarceration. He's consolidated power, formed alliances, become what his father always wanted him to be. Ji-seok's voice was neutral. And his standing order regarding your safety has never wavered. You've been protected continuously for 4 years. Kennedy felt ice slide down her spine. Protected from what? From Lee Sang-woo's son, Lee Min-ho. He spent 4 years building a case against you. Not legal. He's not interested in courts. Something else. Ji-seok pulled out a tablet. Showed Kennedy a series of photographs. Her apartment building, her classroom, the Bronx gallery where she'd curated last month. And in each photo, barely visible in the background, a man, Asian, young, watching. Min-ho believes you seduced his father's killer, that you're the reason Mr. Hwang went to war, that destroying you will hurt Mr. Hwang more than any physical attack could. Ji-seok paused. He's not wrong. Min-jun doesn't care about me anymore. We haven't spoken in 4 years. Respectfully, Dr. Laurent, you don't understand how this works. Mr. Hwang doesn't need to speak to you for you to matter. His reputation is built on the things he protects. And everyone in our world knows the one thing he'll go to war over, again, is you. Kennedy's hands shook. So what does Min-ho want? Leverage, information, a way to hurt Mr. Hwang that doesn't require confronting him directly. Ji-seok leaned forward. He's been researching you, your students, your colleagues, your life. He's building a profile. And when he has what he needs, he'll move. Move how? I don't know yet, but it won't be violence. Min-ho is smarter than his father. He understands that killing you makes you a martyr, that Mr. Hwang would spend the rest of his life dismantling the Lee organization piece by piece. Ji-seok's eyes were hard. No, he'll do something worse, something that destroys you without martyring you. Kennedy stood abruptly. I can't do this. I built a life, a real life. I'm not going back. You were never gone. You've been playing a part for 4 years. Kennedy Laurent is a performance. A very good one, but still a performance. Ji-seok stood as well. The question is whether you continue that performance and hope Min-ho loses interest, or whether you take proactive measures. What kind of measures? The kind Mr. Hwang would approve if he were in a position to approve anything. Ji-seok handed her a business card. There's someone who can help you. Someone who specializes in making problems like Lee Min-ho disappear. Legally. Permanently. Kennedy stared at the card. It had a phone number, nothing else. Who is this? Someone Mr. Huang has worked with before. Someone who understands that sometimes the only way to end a threat is to become a bigger one. Ji-suk paused. Mr. Huang can't protect you from prison. His reach is limited, his movements monitored. But he can provide resources, connections, ways to fight back. I don't want to fight. I want to be left alone. Then you should have chosen a different man to love 4 years ago. Ji-seok's voice softened. I'm sorry, Dr. Laurent, but you made your choice. And Min-ho has made his. Now you have to decide whether you survive it passively or actively. He left. Kennedy sat in that coffee shop for 3 hours, staring at the business card, trying to remember when she'd stopped being a person and become a variable in someone else's equation. She didn't call the number. Instead, she did what Dr. Kennedy Laurent would do: research. Lee Min-ho was 32, educated at Oxford, currently ran his late father's shipping empire. On paper, he was legitimate. No arrests, no obvious criminal connections, just a businessman who'd inherited a complicated legacy. But Kennedy had learned to read between lines. The shipping routes that passed through areas known for trafficking, the business partners with ties to organized crime, the perfect veneer over something rotten. Min-ho was his father's son, just smarter, more patient, more dangerous because he didn't look dangerous, and he'd been watching her for 4 years. Kennedy pulled up her security camera footage. She'd installed cameras after the trial, paranoia becoming precaution. Scrolled back through months of recordings, and found him. Not every day. Not obviously. But there, a figure in a coffee shop she frequented, face partially obscured by a newspaper. The same figure 3 blocks from her apartment, talking on a phone. The same figure at the edge of her gallery opening last month, champagne glass in hand, watching. He'd been building a file on her, learning her patterns, waiting for the right moment. Kennedy's hands shook as she pulled out the burner phone she kept for emergencies. One contact. Just one. She'd never used it, had promised herself she wouldn't. But she needed to know. The phone rang 4 times before a voice answered. Female, professional, unfamiliar. Federal Correctional Institution, Williamsburg. How may I direct your call? Kennedy's throat closed. I need to leave a message for an inmate. Hwang Min-jun. Are you on his approved contact list? No. Then I can't. Please just tell him. Kennedy stopped. What could she say? That she missed him? That she was scared? That 4 years of distance hadn't made her free, just alone? Tell him Kennedy called. He'll know what it means. She hung up before the operator could respond. The call came 3 days later. Not from Min-jun. He wasn't allowed outbound calls to unauthorized numbers. From his lawyer, Chen, the silver-haired man who defended him at trial. Dr. Laurent, I'm calling on behalf of my client. He received your message. Kennedy's heart hammered. And? He wants you to know that the situation with Lee Min-ho is being handled. You should continue your life as normal. Do not engage with surveillance. Do not attempt to contact Min-ho directly. And under no circumstances should you visit Mr. Huang in prison. That's it? That's all he has to say? Chen was quiet for a moment. He also wanted me to convey that you look well, that your work at Hunter is impressive, that he's... The lawyer paused. That he's proud of you. Kennedy felt tears slide down her face. How does he know about my work? Mr. Huang has maintained a comprehensive understanding of your activities, for your protection. You mean he's been watching me? Yes. For 4 years, yes. And he never said anything? Never reached out? Never. Kennedy's voice broke. He gave you what you needed, Dr. Laurent. Distance, space to rebuild, the ability to become someone who wasn't defined by him. Chen's voice softened. That was his gift to you. Don't waste it by looking back. The line went dead. Kennedy sat in her apartment and understood. Min-jun had never let her go. Had spent 4 years in prison watching her from a distance, ensuring her safety, learning about her new life. Not because he was possessive, but because protecting her was the only honest thing he had left. And now, Lee Min-ho threatened that. Which meant the war Kennedy thought she'd escaped was about to consume her again. The package arrived 1 week later. No return address, just her name, Dr. Kennedy Laurent, and her office address at Hunter College. Inside was a book, The Art of Institutional Critique by Andrea Fraser. A standard text, nothing unusual. Except for the inscription on the inside cover. Dr. Laurent, your work on diaspora memory is fascinating. I'd love to discuss it over coffee. There's so much you could teach me about reconstructing identity after displacement. A friend who understands transformation. No signature. No name. But the handwriting was precise, controlled, deliberate. Kennedy's hands shook as she turned to the last page. Another note, smaller. P.S. Does Min-jun know how thoroughly you've erased him? How completely you've become Kennedy Laurent? I wonder if that hurts him more than prison. Kennedy dropped the book. This was the opening move. Not violence, not threats. Psychological warfare. Proof that Min-ho knew who she was, where she worked, how to reach her. Proof that her reconstruction was transparent to anyone who knew where to look. She pulled out the business card Ji-seok had given her. Stared at the number for 5 minutes. Then she called. A man answered on the first ring. You must be Dr. Laurent. Who is this? Someone Mr. Huang trusts. Someone who can solve your Lee Min-ho problem without creating new complications. I don't want anyone killed. Good, because that's not my specialty. My specialty is making people realize that certain courses of action are inadvisable. The man's voice was calm. Lee Min-ho is operating under the assumption that you're vulnerable. That targeting you will hurt Mr. Huang without consequences. We're going to correct that assumption. How? By showing him that Dr. Kennedy Laurent isn't the frightened woman who testified 4 years ago. That you have resources, connections, and the will to use them. A pause. But it requires your cooperation, your active participation. Kennedy's stomach churned. What kind of participation? We set a trap. Make Min-ho believe he has an opening to approach you directly. And when he does, we document everything. His surveillance, his threats, his intentions. Then we use that documentation to make his life very complicated. Legal complications, business complications, the kind that make targeting you more expensive than it's worth. You're asking me to be bait. I'm asking you to be strategic. There's a difference. The man paused. Mr. Huang can't protect you from prison. His influence is limited, but he can provide you with tools. This is one of them. Whether you use it is your choice. Kennedy thought about the book, the inscription, the veiled threat wrapped in academic courtesy. If I say no? If I just ignore Min-ho and hope he goes away? Then he escalates. Maybe he targets your students. Maybe your colleagues. Maybe he manufactures a scandal that destroys your career. He's patient. He has resources. And he believes he's untouchable. The man's voice went hard. Ignoring him won't save you, Dr. Laurent. It'll just give him time to find a softer target. And if I do this? If I help you set a trap? Then Minho learns that targeting you has consequences, that Dr. Kennedy Laurent isn't prey. She's a threat, and hopefully, he moves on to easier victims. Kennedy closed her eyes. What do you need from me? Respond to his book, accept his invitation for coffee, wear a wire, let him think he's winning. A pause. And trust that will keep you safe. I don't trust anyone. Smart, but you trusted Mr. Huang once. Trust that he wouldn't put you in danger he couldn't mitigate. The line went dead before Kennedy could respond. She wore the wire to the coffee meeting. Minho chose a place in Midtown. Public, expensive, the kind of space where everything looked normal and nothing was. He was younger than Kennedy expected. Handsome in the way his father had been, but softer. Educated mannerisms, perfect English, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Dr. Laurent, thank you for meeting me. Kennedy sat across from him. Heart hammering beneath the wire taped to her ribs. Your note was cryptic. Was it? I thought I was quite clear. Minho ordered for both of them without asking what she wanted. Your work on institutional memory fascinates me. The way institutions erase inconvenient histories, reconstruct narratives to serve present needs. It's a common academic theme. Is it? Or is it personal? Minho leaned forward. You've reconstructed yourself quite thoroughly, Dr. Laurent. New name, new credentials, new life. As if Kennedy Hayes never existed. Kennedy forced herself to stay calm. I changed my name legally after the trial. For privacy. It's not unusual. Except Kennedy Hayes wasn't a private person. She was very public. Her face on the news, her testimony in court records. Her name attached forever to a murder trial. Minho's smile widened. So why the reconstruction? Was Kennedy Hayes so damaged you had to bury her completely? I wanted a fresh start. Or Min-jun wanted you to have one. Insisted on it, perhaps. Made you disappear so thoroughly even the FBI lost track. Minho sipped his coffee. That's love, I suppose. The kind that erases you for your own good. Kennedy's hands clenched under the table. What do you want, Mr. Lee? The same thing you want. Understanding. You see, my father died because he underestimated Huang Min-jun. Thought love made him weak. Thought a woman could be used as simple leverage. Minho's eyes were cold. But Min-jun proved otherwise. He killed my father without hesitation. Without mercy. And he did it for you. I didn't ask him to. No. You just existed. Just loved him. Just made yourself so essential to his life that he'd commit murder to protect you. Minho leaned back. That's a kind of power, Dr. Laurent. The power to make monsters do monstrous things. And I want to understand it. There's nothing to understand. I loved him. He loved me. It was complicated and destructive, and it's over. Is it? Minho tilted his head. Because from where I'm sitting, it's very much ongoing. Min-jun is in prison specifically because he chose you over self-preservation. That's not love that ends. That's love that defines. Kennedy stood. This conversation is over. Is it? Because I have questions, Dr. Laurent. About that night. About what really happened in that warehouse. About whether you're as innocent as you claim. Minho stood as well. The trial answered legal questions. I'm interested in moral ones. Then read the transcripts. I have. Multiple times. And I noticed something interesting. You never said you regretted being there. Never said you wished you'd made different choices. You just said you loved him. Minho moved closer. So here's my question. If you could go back, would you still climb on his lap in that club? Would you still take the job at his gallery? Would you still choose him, knowing it would end with my father dead and your life destroyed? Kennedy met his eyes. Yes. The word hung between them like a grenade. Interesting. Minho smiled. Most people lie when answering that question. Try to pretend they'd choose differently. But you're honest about it. You'd do it all again. Because I loved him. That doesn't change. Present tense. You love him. Minho's voice was soft. Does he know that? Does he know Dr. Kennedy Laurent is just a costume you wear? That underneath the degrees and the career and the reconstruction, you're still the woman who'd burn the world for him? Kennedy didn't answer. Thank you for the coffee, Dr. Laurent, and for confirming what I suspected. Minho placed cash on the table. You're not a victim, you're an accomplice. And that changes everything. He left. Kennedy sat in that coffee shop, wire still recording, and understood what Minho was really doing. Not building a case against her, building a narrative, one where she wasn't coerced or manipulated, but willingly complicit. Where loving Min-jun made her guilty of something worse than crime. Guilty of choosing destruction knowingly. And if he could prove that narrative, if he could show the world that Dr. Kennedy Laurent was just Kennedy Hayes in disguise, he wouldn't have to kill her. He'd just have to expose her and watch her carefully reconstructed life collapse. The man on the phone called that night. We got it all. The surveillance references, the implicit threats, the admission that he's been researching you. It's enough for a restraining order at minimum, possibly charges for stalking. He's too smart for that. He never explicitly threatened me. No. But he established a pattern of behavior that any judge would find concerning. And more importantly, the man paused. We established that you're not prey, that you'll fight back, that targeting you has consequences. Will it work? Will he leave me alone? Probably not, but it'll make him cautious, make him reconsider direct approaches. The man's voice softened. Dr. Laurent, you understand this isn't over, right? Minho isn't his father. He's not interested in quick violence. He's interested in long games, psychological warfare, making you second-guess every choice. So what do? You live your life. You build your career. You become so successful, so established, that exposing you becomes more complicated than it's worth. A pause. And you accept that you'll never be completely free of this. That loving Hwang Min-jun marked you permanently. Kennedy's chest tightened. Does Min-jun know about the meeting? He knows. He approved the wire. The man stopped. He's been following every development closely. Can you give him a message? That's not advisable. Please. Kennedy's voice broke. Just tell him I said thank you. For the distance. For the protection. For giving me a chance to be someone else. Even if it didn't work. Silence. Then, I'll pass it along. The line went dead. Kennedy sat in her apartment and looked at the life she'd built. The degrees on the wall. The book she'd published. The syllabi for classes she taught. All of it real. All of it earned. And all of it compromised by the fact that Kennedy Hayes still lived underneath. Still loved a man in prison. Still couldn't imagine a future that didn't include his shadow. She was free. She was marked. And she had no idea which truth mattered more. 2 months later, the envelope arrived on a Thursday. Official letterhead. Federal Bureau of Prisons. Kennedy's hands shook as she opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Notice of inmate transfer. Hwang Min-jun, 84729-054, has been transferred from FCI Williamsburg to USP Canaan effective immediately due to security concerns. USP Canaan, maximum security. The kind of prison where violence was currency and survival was achievement. Kennedy called Ji-seok immediately. What happened? Why was he transferred? There was an incident. Lee Min-ho has connections inside FCI Williamsburg. They attempted... Ji-seok paused. It's been handled, but Mr. Hwang's security classification has been upgraded. USP Canaan is safer for him, given the circumstances. Min-ho tried to have him killed? Tried and failed, but it confirmed what we suspected. Min-ho isn't interested in waiting. He's escalating. Kennedy felt ice in her veins. What does that mean for me? It means Min-ho has made his choice. If he can't hurt Mr. Hwang directly, he'll hurt you indirectly. And the coffee meeting gave him exactly what he needed. Confirmation that you're still connected, still vulnerable through that connection. So what do I do? You make a choice, Dr. Laurent. A real one. Ji-seok's voice was hard. You can continue as you are, building your life, hoping Min-ho loses interest, accepting that you'll always be looking over your shoulder. Or what? Or you re-enter the war. Actively. Strategically. You stop being a target and become a player. I don't know how to do that. Then learn. Mr. Hwang did. You can too. A pause. There's a reason he fell for you, Dr. Laurent. Not because you were safe or easy or convenient. Because you were brave enough to walk into danger when everyone else knew better. That person is still there. You've just buried her under degrees and a new name. That person almost got Mika killed, got Min-jun locked up for 15 years, destroyed everything she touched. That person survived, built something new, became Dr. Kennedy Laurent from nothing. Ji-seok's voice softened. The question is whether you trust her enough to fight back, or whether you let Min-ho decide who you become. He hung up. Kennedy sat in her office and stared at the transfer notice. Min-jun was in maximum security because Lee Min-ho had tried to have him killed. And now Min-ho was coming for her. Not with violence, but with exposure. With the threat of revealing Dr. Kennedy Laurent as a fraud. Kennedy Hayes in disguise. She had two choices. Continue the performance. Hope Min-ho lost interest. Live carefully, quietly, always looking over her shoulder. Or fight back. Become the thing Min-ho feared. Not a victim, but an adversary. Someone with resources, connections, and the will to use them. Someone like Min-jun. Kennedy pulled out her phone, called the number on the business card Ji-seok had given her months ago. I need to talk, she said when he answered. About Lee Min-ho? About fighting back. About becoming something other than prey. I'll send you an address. Come alone. The line went dead. Kennedy looked at her office, at the life she'd built, at Dr. Kennedy Laurent's carefully constructed existence. And she understood. The trial hadn't ended the war. The verdict hadn't brought peace. 4 years of distance hadn't made her free. They'd just given her time to prepare for the next battle. The question was whether she'd fight it as Dr. Kennedy Laurent, academic, respectable, safe. Or as Kennedy Hayes, damaged, dangerous, and hopelessly compromised by love for a man who was willing to burn the world for her even from a prison cell. She stood, grabbed her coat, made her choice. Not because it was right, not because it was smart, but because some wars don't end until you stop running. And Kennedy was done running.